Casting with Ceri Jones.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. Well, this week's episode is a special one for me. I never thought when I started it in 2020, during lockdown, I would one day celebrate in 200 episodes. I've had an amazing time doing them. I met lots of new friends along the way. So I want to say a big thanks to all my guests who I've had on, and especially the patrons of the channel, for their support, and without them it wouldn't happen. And to celebrate the 200 episodes, I decided to give a day's fishing with me on Corrib with lunch, all included, as a prize just for my patrons. So for this episode, I needed to do something a bit different. Numerous times over the years I've been asked why to do my story. I am joined by David Guest, ex-colleague of mine at the Flyfishing Journal, a top journalist and experienced podcaster himself. So it's time for me to sit the other side of the desk and answer the questions. I know what it's like to be sitting in the spotlight in the other chair now. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to a very special episode of Casting with Ceri Jones. This week's guest really does need no introduction at all, because his name is in the title. That's right, to celebrate the fine achievement of reaching 200 podcast episodes, the guest for this week is none other than Ceri himself. We're going to hear from him about what first attracted him to fishing, how he cut his teeth on the mountain lakes of Wales with the help of some very influential teachers. We'll hear from how he went from being a professional photographer doing his first features for leading fly fishing magazines to how he first fell in love with the Emerald Isle and the trout that lie beneath the surfaces of its locks. And of course, that one special fish that changed his life and his outlook on fishing forever. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Ceri having the tables turned and being the one who has to answer the questions for a change. Well, Ceri, thank you very much for inviting me down and also for allowing me the honour to interview you for this special episode of the podcast. We had a nice day out yesterday fishing in one of your local waters. And yeah, I must admit, it's nice to be in a nice dry studio today.
Yeah,
but it was nice to fish with you.
You're very welcome. And as you said, it's nice to be in the dry today because, you know, it's good to have you staying here. And the plan was to have a couple of days fishing, at least one good day. And even though the weather was horrific, it turned out really good, didn't it?
It certainly did, yeah. It wasn't the weather I was expecting, and it wasn't weather I would expect to do well in. But yeah, we actually had a great day in terms of fishing and in terms of just having a good laugh.
Yeah. Well, I got to thank you as well for coming down to do this, because it was you that gave me the idea about turning the books and having a podcast on me. Instead of inviting guests.
Well, that is right, because obviously this episode is a special episode. 200 up. It's quite an amazing achievement. Did you ever think when you first sat down in front of a microphone to do this?
No.
It was that you get to this point?
Not at all. And as some listeners will know and some don't, how it all started was because it was right at the start of lockdown. And it was at that time when the first couple of months, you couldn't leave anyone in your property, and like, I'm a photographer, I have a studio here, so I thought, I've got to keep myself busy. So I was with a girlfriend at the time, and she said, ever thought about doing a podcast? And to be honest, I heard of it, but I never knew much about podcasts. So that's how it actually come about. And then with her help then on like the background of it and how it works with the analytics and how to get it out there and put the website together, I decided to think, right, let's go for it.
And I guess obviously you're a great kind of people person anyway, so doing a podcast and talking about something you love it kind of came quite naturally to you, you know.
Yeah, and the position I was in, I'd worked for Trout Fisherman as a freelancer for 26 years. So I had lots of contacts, been to lots of places, and some credibility. So I thought to myself, let's do this. And I think I started it at the right time as well. And like everything, I want to do everything the best I can. So I went out and I paid just short about $5,000 for different things, the mics, the mixing desk and things. And I wanted to, so I practiced for a while before I actually went live in the July, I think it was. And I just didn't realize how big it was going to come, or how big it was going to get, rather. So after a while, about 18 months or so, I grew to such an extent, I think the figure was just under 16,000 listeners a month. And not only that, which is great, you know, I was buzzing to think that I had this audience and what they wanted to listen to, what I was talking about and the guests. After each episode, and I still get it now, I get numerous messages of people, and they can feel sometimes, like there's one or two I've had which are quite touching, and they say they listened to the podcast and where I was and fishing these different venues, or they fished with a child with their father and it brought back memories. There's many, many messages which I was getting, and it was fulfilling for me to think that I was doing this and there were people really appreciating what I did, because I wasn't making any money at all from it in the early days. You're talking, it was only after about 18 months of doing the podcast where I was touching 16,000 listeners. I wasn't making any money from it. And it does take, even now, 2 days a week to put a podcast together. I think a lot of people don't realize what's involved with it. I think people like yourself, because you do podcasts yourself, know what's involved.
Sure.
And I'm not complaining at all, because I love doing it. I love the editing of it, putting it together, talking to the anglers and the guests. So then I decided then to do the Patreon, and the Patron channel is the people, my Patreons. I got a huge thanks to give to them, because without them it wouldn't go on, you know. And I've made friends from it as well. Not just this is just a channel, you know. Some of the patrons which I've met then over the last year or two, I've become really good friends. So let's hope it continues. But I think the key thing about the podcast, all of it really, the main thing, I started it at the right time, where people wanted to listen to fishing because they couldn't go fishing. And the next best thing to fishing is talking about it.
Absolutely. And that is what we're going to do today, is talk about your fishing life. And I thought a really nice thing for you to do, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners will be interested to know more about this, is take us back to your youth, growing up in South Wales. How did fishing get you? How did you get hooked? Well,
funny enough, there was no one really in the family who went fishing. But after saying that, my father was from a place called Penryn Daidrath in North Wales. And the only fishing he had done, it wasn't with rod and line. He actually used to, on the Traeth, on the beach, you can say, in North Wales. They lived on a farm, and they would go down to the beach, and then they would put a line of 100 hooks on the beach with worms on, logons they would call them. And then the water would come in, the tide, and him and his father used to sleep there then through the night and wait for the tide to go back out. And that's what he used to do. And they used to collect these fish then and sell them during the following day. So as regards anyone in the family who fished, yeah, he was the only one really, but he didn't fish rod and line. But I always had this urge. And when I was 12 years of age, I always remember, I went from the junior school to the comprehensive, and there was a school teacher there then doing after class, not lessons, but like a little club, a fishing club. And I thought, I want to do this. So I went once or twice. I didn't have any gear, and they used to tie flies. And so my mother, when I come home, I want to start fishing. She didn't like the idea of it at all. And she said, oh no, and you're not having waders. She said, you know, you'll drown and this and that. So it was a no from her. But I kept going to the class after, and I bought a fishing rod without telling her. And it was a blank with half-made rod, fiberglass. And the school teacher, Dave Roberts, I said, can I keep it here? Because I didn't want to go home to show her. So I bought this rod. I think it was about £8 at the time. And I actually then, after the lessons, used to put rings on the rods. We used to whip it.
Wow.
And so I made my first rod, half made my first rod. But I didn't have a reel. And there was a boy then in school. He was selling a reel. And I remember it was a Rimfly king size, I think it was called. And it was £5. So I paid him £5 for this reel. Came home. And as a kid, as a 12-year-old, I was big into what's called Subutio. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, definitely remember Subutio.
Yeah. And I had a cupboard full of teams. So he smuggled this reel into the house and hid it behind the teams. And anyway, from that then, I told her what I had done. And I think she found it. So I went once or twice. And the funny thing was then, I was successful. I instantly came good to it. I was in that. You could say at that age, you become natural to things a lot easier than when you're older. And then she was telling the neighbours then, oh, Ceri got a trout today. And so she warmed to it then, So that was it. And then my first day actually fishing, went to a place called Eglwys and Nenydd Reservoir. It's still going today. And I went with a teacher, and there was a gang of us, probably about 5 of us. It wouldn't be allowed now. A school teacher taking 5 children in a car, and there were 2 in the front seat. It was a chaos. And we loved it. And I had 3 fish. The very first fish I hooked, I lost. I was excited. And it just came off. It was too tight. But after that then, I had the bug good and proper then,
Sounds like you had some amazing adult role models in your life. Apart, your mum obviously not that keen on it initially, but you had some teachers who really helped you out get on that fishing journey there.
Yeah, he was quite an amazing character, Dave Roberts. He was a scripture teacher. And the funny thing was, I'm not a religious person, I hated scripture. But when it came to the subjects you wanted to take for your O-levels, or would that be 15, something like that, I picked scripture because I still wanted to go fishing with him.
There you go.
But so we did that, and again, but we'd only go fishing once every 2-3 months. So I wanted to my father then, I told my father I want to go fishing. So he used to take me to a lake, Llynfawr, where we were yesterday.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Wonderful lake it is.
Oh, it is a special lake. But again, he would only be able to take me in the car every week or 2 weeks or so. So what I would do then is I had the bag. Now this lake now is probably, I would say, 6 miles to the end of the valley by train or car. And you've got to go over the mountain then to the lake, another 6 miles. So then what I wanted to do, and I would do this 4 to 5 times a week, I would catch a train to Herbert, the end of the line, where I wouldn't pay. I would wait outside the train station and run in and pretend, the guy knew what was going on. And because it was a ticket office, they thought I'd paid. Anyway, I had to go up to the top of the valley for nothing. And then I'd walk 6 miles then and back. And it was like an addiction. I needed to do it. And even when I started work in Cardiff later on, I'd always leave at 4 o'clock, go up to the lake, fish for a few hours, and then go to work. So even at the early age, I had that hunger to do it,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think everyone listening to this can probably relate to their own kind of origin story of how fishing got to them. And some people it was when they were kids, some people it was when they were a little bit older. That's just how it gets you. And then, so from being a youngster fishing around South Wales, you obviously became like a young adult, and you had some early success in the competition scene.
Yeah, because the next step then, I needed to join a fishing club, and I had members of the family. Bob Challenger, he was, and he said he was a fly fisherman, and he said, "Oh, come to the Osprey Fly Fishers in Pontypridd." And I always remember we used to go upstairs above Lloyd's Bank, and every Wednesday, and we used to tie flies, used to meet. And it's then I started fly tying as well. So anyway, started fishing competitions for the club, and I started having a lot of success. And then I went to fish then in the trials, to fish for the Welsh team. I did that. I had the top rod, the youngest one at the time, to win it's called the Ned Hughes Trophy. He was the Welsh champion, you can see.
Okay.
So that gave me a lot of confidence and success. Become Benson Edges Welsh champion. I fished European Opens, and we had a team win there as well. But I did a lot of competitions, and that's when trout fishermen, you could say, noticed, because I was in the competition scene, doing well. So they asked me then, there's a guy, Chris Dawn, his name was, would you like to do a feature for us? So I said, yeah. And when I told him I was a photographer, because I was a photographer then, for a local newspaper, News of the Valleys, then I went to an advertising agency then, called Golly Slayton and Partners. So as a photographer, I think it all come together quite nicely, and I started doing features and articles for trout fishermen. Must have been about 20 probably at that time. And Chris Dawn would come down, and we'd fish all over the place, all over Wales, and he used to love coming to Wales. And then from that, I was lucky enough then to go to places all over Europe, you can say then, that's so I was quite fortunate. But as regards competitions nowadays, I'll fish one every couple of years, It's, the competition scene isn't for me. I've done it, and I loved it, but I went a bit stale after a while. I got bored with it, And what I find, this will knock a few people as well, I guess, so some people can relate to it, is you're spending a lot of time with anglers. Like, for instance, you go on an international, there might be, say, a week away. And of the team, there's always one or two which, outside of the international, you wouldn't want to bother with them. So I was thinking, I wasn't really enjoying it. And I thought, nah. And then I discovered Ireland. And I thought, that's it. I don't really want this competition scene at all now. For me, the only competition now is between me and the fish.
Yeah, and we'll obviously be talking about Ireland in a little bit. But with the competitions, do you think maybe because you were young and kind of you were freshly bitten by the fishing bug, you just wanted to eat, sleep and breathe fishing, is that maybe more what helps you be more into competitions when you're younger, and then when you get a bit older you start doing fishing for yourself rather than for sort of external recognition?
Yeah, I think there's a book, I'm not sure what, I can't remember, I'll have to look in my library, you can see your books. I think it's called Mastering the Nymph by Gordon Fraser. And in there, there's a paragraph right at the start, and it said, in the beginning, you want to catch a fish. Then after that, you want to catch maybe the most fish. And when you've done that, you want to catch the biggest fish. And when you've done that, the only thing left is to catch the hardest fish. And I think that is, for many people, the cycle. I did the competition thing, did well with it, and I wanted something else then, wanted a new challenge. So I think that's the reason I've stopped the competition fishing, and what I'm known for is the ferox. For me, that is the hardest fish.
And also the biggest, which we will talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. You talked there a little bit about how you first got started working with trout fishermen, and obviously with this podcast, and also more recently you were editor of Flyfishing Journal, which is, of course, how we met, because we worked together on that. Do you feel fortunate that you've been able to sort of carve out a career or carve out a living from this thing that was such a passion for you, throughout your whole life? Yeah,
I have been fortunate. Some people might think, you can earn lots of money from fishing. There's very few.
We know that's not true.
Yeah, there's very few areas in fishing where you can make good money. So I soon realised that I'd rather get by doing something I enjoy than getting up, 9 till 5. Unfortunately, a lot of people got to do. So then I just made that choice. And to be honest, it's like when you're self-employed, it's like feast or famine. But, you know, even when you got famine moments, I'd rather be on a boat, drifting on a lake.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, it's been difficult at times. And unfortunately, as well, I think the trade years ago was far better, you know, with magazines as well as the trade itself. So I think as time goes on, the people now will want to get into fishing and make money from it. It's quite a hard task, especially with social media now. Everyone wants to be the face, you know, by getting as many likes as they can. So it is a difficult place to be. But one thing I noticed as well, I can say about the magazines, you know, the people writing for them, the credible people, they've done a lot, they've experienced a lot, they've achieved a lot. So they are the faces people should look up to. Social media nowadays, you get people who come on the scene after a year and they're telling people how to do this, how to do that. They might be very good at doing the videos, but, you know, it's too many mishmash out there at the moment, you know. And it can be boring looking at. When I look now on YouTube, I don't look at YouTube videos for fishing. I just rather go completely off the scene and just look at photography. You know, there's very few good ones which I will watch.
Yeah, I think it's you know, because it's so easy now for everyone and anyone to publish their own content. Naturally, it's not all going to be the greatest quality. Whereas what you were saying before about magazines, you know, those magazine writers and photographers and stuff were at least, you know, vetted to a certain point, or they had to reach a certain standard to be to divulge their information. Yeah, I guess that doesn't really happen as much in social media. So it's pretty hard to have a fishing conversation with you without talking about your first love, your original love, Ireland. Let's just talk about how you fell in love with fishing in Ireland first of all.
Yeah, the first time I went to Ireland, it was round about 1988 year, the strike, 1989 maybe, I can't remember. There was an international in 1988, so I did go as a guest to go along. But then I think it was the following year then, and that happened to be in Lough Corrib. But the following year, I went to Lough Corrib again. And we were in this bar, the Pontoon Bridge Hotel. And I was loving it, you know. I was like new to the Guinness and talking fishing, the music in the bar. And I thought, this is brilliant. But we were having a shit time. Like, we didn't catch any fish. There's 6 of us from the Ospreys. And then these 2 guys come in with a big, clear carrier bag. And in this carrier bag were about 10 trout. And I thought, Jesus, how did they manage that? So I told the boys, I'm going up to talk to them. So I went up to talk to them, and the name was Brian Cox and Colin Higgins. And they said, come with us tomorrow if you want. We'll show you how to catch them, where to catch them. I thought, brilliant. I'll go back to the boys now and tell them. I went back to the boys. Can you even imagine this now, right? And there's 1 or 2 of them. They were so cocky. You know who they are now, right? Because I don't talk to them now. Their history. And they said, they didn't catch those fish. If we can't catch them, they can't. That's how arrogant these boys were. So I thought, right. So I thought to myself, all right, well, I'm going to go with these boys. So the following day, I went to the boys, and I had lemon trout and a salmon.
Wow.
So as you can imagine, I came back that night. They didn't like it at all. So from that moment, I didn't speak to the boys, and they became my best friends then, Brian and Colin. And from that then, the following year, I went to Corrib, and that was something incredible.
Yeah, I mean, Corrib is obviously holds a really special place in your heart for many reasons. And that's an interesting story there about, I think that's kind of like a lesson in, you know, don't think you know it all. No matter how good you are as an angler, you know, you can always learn from someone else, especially if it's not your home water, you know.
And the great thing is, I think to myself, I could easily have said, okay, you know, I won't go with them. I'll just stick with the gang I'm here. And everything, the whole, 30 years would have been totally different to me. Yeah. But I made that decision to go with the boys, and they've been lifelong friends since. But the actual turning point for me was on one of the trips in the early days. it was our last day, and a good friend of mine, Steve Gale, we had a couple of days there, and then I had to take the boat across the lake. We had to swap the engines over and whatever. And what is it? I think it's about 2 to 3 mile wide, Lough Corrib. And so anyway, he said, right, I'll drive over the other side and I'll meet you there. So he left. I was on my own now. This is the first time I was on my own in a boat. And so I was excited. Anyway, we had a good trip. So I pulled the engine, started going across the lake. I'm about 100 yards. It conked out, run to fuel. And then it was like a magical feeling then, right? You're out on this lake in the middle of Ireland, on the west, and I'm rowing across this lake. And I was by myself for like rowing 2 miles. And then I was rowing, a little bit nervous, and all of a sudden I thought, and all I could hear was the lapping of the wave on the boat, right? And the sun was going down in the evening. And it was like, is it an epiphany or something they call it? The moment where you think, this is it. This is what I want. Because I was I was probably about 20 at the time. And, I was going clubbing 3 nights a week in Cardiff, and the whole scene was totally different. I go fishing, but then I thought, this is what I want. And I was rolling across that lake, and it was a turning point in my life then. I thought, this is what I want. This is the place I want to be. In Ireland, fishing on a boat, in the middle of the west, with fantastic scenery and surroundings. And I've been going every year since.
Yeah, that started a chain of events in your life that's just seen you, return to Ireland consistently, and the west of Ireland and Corrib in particular has played a huge part in your life ever since.
Like, I have fished, I wouldn't say most of the lochs, but a lot of lochs in Ireland over the years. Not just through pleasure, doing work for the magazines. But Corrib is definitely the place. It's the most challenging by far, but there's nothing like it. Yeah. It is nothing. People have got to experience it. That what you often get when you're out on the lake, especially, I do enjoy being on my own. When I'm trolling, I like to be on my own. When you fly fishing, I like company. But there's something about being on a lake by yourself, as I said, listening to those waves lapping, and then you often get these shafts of light coming through the sun because you're right on the west. The clouds break up with the wind coming across, and you can feel the freshness in the west air coming off the Atlantic. And then you get like flashes of gorse on the sides of the loch, and you smell the peat fires maybe on the cottages. The whole thing, it's like senses overloaded, and it's feeling, it almost brings a lump to your throat. Yeah, that is such a special place, and it's almost, you can hear, it's almost the wind is welcoming you back. So, but being there's lots of people say just being out fishing is enough. Yeah. You don't have to catch fish. People say that, but people obviously want to catch fish. But I find just being there is enough.
It is a cliche, and sometimes people, maybe sometimes me, use it as an excuse when they haven't caught anything. But I think when you find that really special place that speaks to your soul, which I think Corrib definitely does for you, then simply being there, it is enough. It is a cliche, but it's definitely true. So another reason why Corrib is such a important and poignant part of your life is obviously the record, Ferox. Maybe you could talk us through a little bit about how you became obsessed with that and how life changed, like how life was before that and life after that. Like, how did that change your life?
As I touched on, there's different levels. You want to catch a fish and you're looking for new goals. And I was in a great position. I'd done well in the competition scene. And then I did a lot of fishing for trout fishermen, which was great. That was a special time. And I'd go to a lot of different places, Iceland, Finland, Sweden. I've done a lot. And then you kind of get, I wouldn't say stale, but I wanted something else. I lost that urge to get out and go fishing. So I started then sea trout fishing initially to see if I can get into that, and there was a good friend, Alan Rees, who lives locally here. I went with him a couple of times, and then I would have the confidence to go on my own in the dark when you get to know a river. And it is great, and there's a romance about it as well. And I was getting fish. I was getting fish up to like £5 in the dark, and it's a buzz. But after about 3 or 4 years, it didn't really fill that gap. So then I thought to myself, right, and I was going back to Ireland twice a year, usually May, September, fly fishing. And one trip, I think it was around about the year 2000, 2001, I saw with my own eyes a big ferox. It was a high teen fish. And I thought, Jesus, I got to get one of those. You know, see photographs of a fish. It's one thing. When you see the fish, they thought, and now that changed me. I thought, I got to get one. Initially, I thought, I just want to get a big trout, a double-figure trout. But little did I know, it gripped me so much. I was going over every chance, even for a weekend, every spare money I had, I was getting a ferry over to fish. If I hadn't discovered Ireland, I'd be a rich man now. Because all my money's gone over there.
I think a lot of anglers could say that about fishing in general, but yeah.
So then I learnt the art of trolling. Now, a lot of people think, oh, you are trolling. And they haven't got a clue how much you need to know to get good fish trolling. It's not a case of just chucking a lure in the back or a bait. There's so much, and I'm not going to go into that now because there's 1 or 2 podcasts explaining what's involved to catching these fish. But it was, you know, I caught my first big one, you could say, was £8 trolling. And I thought, oh, this is good, I got the bag now. And for a couple of years, I wouldn't even pick up my fly rod because when you're trolling, I'm trolling with roach because these big fish, you know, there's not much chance of catching a big fish on a fly. Occasionally they do. But then I was having them £11, £9, £12, that sort of size. And then I was obsessed with it then. And then I'd be going over from here by myself, driving over to Corrib, getting on the lake. And I got my own boat. So, you know, that's one thing I needed, to be independent as well and get my own boat and engine. And I got to the stage, it became an obsession because I was with a girlfriend at the time. She wanted to go to Italy for a week. In May. Can you believe that? No. So I said, no, I'm not going. So she went to Rome for a week and I went to Corrib for 2 weeks.
Right.
And I'm glad I did as well because I had a £14 prawn that trip. And then we obviously finished after that.
Yeah, the relationship didn't last much longer after that. But
yeah, but my passion for the ferox was in full flow then. And I'd be out there for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. I would be out some mornings as early as 4 o'clock. Very rare, mine. Most of them would be like 8 o'clock. And then I'd be on that boat by myself till about 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And I would do that 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. I'd live and breathe being on the Corrib. And I was getting big fish then. And I knew it was close. And then it was then I thought, right, I want to get the record now.
So you actually actively, that was what you targeted. That's what you wanted. Because
by doing what I did, I was going to different areas. And I'd find areas where there were bigger fish in certain areas. So there was obviously something about the terrain where the bigger fish live. And I was concentrating on these areas. Again, I won't go into detail because there's winds involved and the angles of drifts and when, where, drop-offs and whatever. But in 2011, I know I came close. I had a 19.5 trout.
Just for context, what was the record at the time you were trying to beat?
21.
21.
Yeah. So then I was happy, 19.5. And I was over the moon when I had that fish. I played it for about just over half hour in a big wind, big wind. And it was hailstones. And when I landed the fish, the hail was bouncing on me, right, on the boat. I had to go into shelter, so I went behind one of the islands and I stopped the engine then. When I was on the shore, I looked down and there was this 19.5 trout. And I looked up at the sky and the hail was hitting me hard. And I just roared, is that the best you can do? Come on, you know. And I roared from my boots. I was deliriously over the moon. And then, so obviously that was, I thought, okay, I know the method now. I know how to catch them. And there are certain methods to catching fish up to 14, 15 pound. And there's a definite different type of method for the bigger fish. So I've sussed it. So the following year then, I went back out, and it was a year to the day, exact day, I think it was the 26th of May. I went to the same spot. Conditions were opposite direction wind, but big wind again.
Mm-hmm.
Big weather, big fish. I'm convinced that all my big fish are coming like weather you wouldn't normally go out in. Gets the adrenaline going. So a year to the day, I had the record. And I was, when I caught it, I knew it was a record. I landed it after an hour and a quarter.
Wow.
He came to the net. He was in half of the net about half hour before, and he actually got out. So you can imagine the state my head was in there.
Yeah.
And again, it was a big wave. And then when I netted him then, I motored the boat into the lee of one of these islands, and I looked at it again. And I phoned a friend of mine at the time, Paul Geraghty. He was about 4 mile down the lake. And I wanted to phone somebody to have a look at it.
Yeah.
And he came up, and the first thing he said, "That's the record." I said, "I know." And we weighed it, and I actually had a brand new Rapala scales, and he did, ironically. So we used both the scales.
Yeah.
And it was 25.2.
Okay.
And we took some pictures. And then by the time we actually got in then to the shore, jump in the car and go to the village, it was the best part of an hour. So it lost weight. So we officially had it verified then in Centra in Clonbur. And it was 23.12. So it was still the record. And so then that was crazy then. Because when we actually came into the village, I didn't ring anyone, but Paul, in his boat, we were both travelling in, he rang the pub to say that we'd had this fish, and it's like jungle drums. And everyone was waiting, and it was like a royal visit, honest to God. Wow. We were driving down Clonbur in the main street, and there was a couple of hundred people on the road outside the both pubs, and they were seeing the car coming, and they were coming up to the car, I felt like the Beatles, you know. And then anyway, it was just one hell of a night then.
Yeah.
And people were travelling. I knew people who travelled from Dublin then.
Just
two people just to see that fish.
Wow.
Because it's a piece of history, you know.
Absolutely. And that, you were talking about the previous big one you caught, the 19 pounder, and how you were sort of this amazing image of you roaring in the hail. But with this record, it almost was a little bit more subdued. Were you
Yes.
shocked? Were you in shock a little bit?
I was a bit numb.
Yeah.
I thought, you know, if ever I did have the record, I'd be like getting drunk and partying and delirious.
Yeah.
But no, I was so calm, and no matter how much I drank, I was still sober.
Really?
Yeah, I did. It's just like, it was not what I expected the feeling to be.
Yeah.
But it was it didn't really dawn on me for a few days later, because the following night, actually, the following day, he was in the newspapers. He was on the front page of the Irish Times. And but I didn't know this because I was in bed the following day, and the mobile phone rang, and he said, "Oh, this is Galway Bay FM," and I didn't know what this was about. No, and they said, "Oh, you know, like to chat to you about the record trout," and they said, "How did you find out?" And they said, "You haven't seen the papers this morning." I said, "No." Anyway, he was in the papers, so I was staying in a hotel that night actually because I met my mate, ironically. And I went down to the fire, and there he was on the newspapers, a picture of me with this fish. So it was, but it was good.
Did it change? How did it change your life? I'm guessing it changed your life.
It did in two ways actually, because he was in every magazine. I wouldn't say the world, but there's all Europe as well, and all across Ireland. And you have some trolls which they say you should have put it back and all this nonsense. I just don't care, you know. And so, but it changed it in as much as I would go out every day when I was over in Ireland, and I don't know. And it's like you achieve something, you've gained something, You've lost something.
Mm.
That urge I had to catch the record, I'd done it, and it's like something has gone. I do enjoy my fly fishing more now, actually, just the same.
Well, the thing is, with this, as you've explained, it wasn't like you just went out one day and randomly caught the record. You poured your life and soul into achieving that. So you worked hard for it. So it wasn't like you just, caught it by fluke.
Oh, no.
Which can happen with records sometimes. Not all, but some records are quite fortunate.
I've been asked then on 2 occasions, commissioned to write the book, but I won't do it because I think one of the reasons is I put so much time and effort, blood, sweat and tears into it. I don't want to just tell people how to do it and someone else go along then and get the knowledge which I'd earned.
Absolutely.
You can say, the number of times I've told the story, because what was quite good actually, I've had so many pints out of it, because people want to hear the story. You're in a pub and say, "Oh, I'll buy a pint." So that's quite nice.
Well, you were telling me yesterday that you got given some kegs of Guinness.
Yeah, I
right?
got given 4 kegs of Guinness. Wow. By Guinness, obviously, because there was the unveiling. Because I had it taxidermied, and he was in the pub in Clonbur for a few years. Yeah. It's in my living room now. And it's it is a special. It's a lovely job. So anyway, we had the mayor of Galway, we had lots of celebrities there, and unveiling when it was done in the June after I caught it, actually, or July. And Guinness just give us 4 kegs for it, And I thought, that's great. And then afterwards I thought, well, what good is 4 Guinness kegs to me? I can't. You haven't got the facility to get the Guinness out.
No.
So I done a deal with Burke's at the time then. So we had a good night, you could say.
So now your relationship with Ireland, now obviously you had this mission to catch the record, Ferox, you did, and you say that it's it's kind of changed a little bit what you get out of trips to Ireland now. You go for slightly different reasons now. Is that?
Yeah. Just touching on as well what I've gained from it.
Yes.
I think what it does is give me a huge sense of belief and confidence to do anything outside of fishing. Because to think that I was spending every day, weeks on end, early till night, not really knowing if it existed.
True.
And then, so when it actually, the amount of time you spent on that lake, in every condition going, I mean, like, wake up in the morning, some mornings, and it'd be absolutely empty and down. And you're in a nice warm bed, but you force yourself up, and you're wet before you start fishing. So, and the belief I had, and then it came true. I came to reality. So it's given me belief to do anything. Don't let anybody say, "Oh, you can't do that." You can't do that. It's impossible. I can do anything now. So that's what it does give me. But nowadays, I do trawl occasionally, but I still fish for the Ferox, and I love it with a passion. But everything goes back. I've had numerous high teens, 15, 16, 17s, and they all go back now. I think it was important for me to have the record mounted because of the effort and the hours and the time and the energy I put into it. I was the only answer for me to do, and so I've got no regrets about doing it either. It's there for me to see every day up on the wall, and but I do enjoy seeing the trout go back now, but I do enjoy my fly fishing now. It's almost like go back I've done it, and drifting on a lake, fishing a team of wets or dries, catching nice trout. You're talking £2. I thoroughly enjoy it. And yesterday when we were fishing the local lake,
yes,
we were catching fish sort of from say £2. Well, we had them up to 10. You did, and it's like I enjoy that now. And it's just being out. People say, "Oh, why haven't you got the urge now to catch an even bigger one?" And I'm thinking, nah, I'm happy. If one does come, great. But I actually hooked one after the following year, which could have been about the same size, and he came off.
Yeah.
But
I think it goes back to that thing you were talking about before, the kind of evolution of what you want to get out of fishing. But once you've kind of almost reached like the end of it, let's say, and now it's back to just doing it for pleasure, for enjoyment, for spending time with people you get on with and having a nice day together, and just the simple pleasure of catching fish. And
that's it. That's something as well which I've noticed with Ireland is you break for lunch. That's a big thing in Ireland. And I remember before I started going over there, you're fishing the lakes around here. No one would stop. There's it's almost like a competitive thing. Even on a pleasure day, you're fishing and eating the same time. You don't stop. But what I like about Ireland is you maybe go out 11 o'clock, and after about 2 hours, you pull into an island. You've only been fishing 2 hours, and you have a break then for an hour or two, and then, you have a couple of hours, but you're mixing with like-minded people.
Yes.
That's the big thing, and it's not a competitive thing at all. It's just nice being out, enjoying the simple things, making a fire. That feeds a soul by itself. Go on an island, make a fire, get a kettle out and a pan, maybe a couple of steaks, and it's just chatting with people. They are memories. They are, and it does feed your soul. The pace of life is totally different. And people who I've taken out who haven't experienced it before, they say, it is something different, which I've only found in Ireland. In fact, I'll tell you a little funny story. I did experience it in Sweden. One of the earlier trips I went to Sweden, I met a guy. We were up in the mountains, up in the cabin. We had a helicopter to take us there, really remote. And his name was Per Eriksson. And this is something we did then. We were fishing, stop for lunch, make a fire, and you'd have a black kettle, put the coffee in, and we'd have some food. But once, after 3 days, I noticed he was giving me a can of lager every day. And we'd have elk, reindeer meat, and it was a lovely wilderness experience. And then, like this guy, Per, if you saw him, he's probably about 6'6", had a big knife beside his leg. If you came across a bear, you'd want to be with him. He made like Grizzly Adams look like an office boy. Right? He was the proper Mackay. And he was very serious. And I noticed he was giving me a can of lager every day. But he was just having a coffee. I said, Per, what is the story? How come you're not drinking lager? And he looked at me very serious. He said, I do not drink alcohol. I said, really? What's the reason for that? He said, too many female hormones in alcohol. How'd you work that out? Wait till I tell the boys this back home. And he said, start talking shit and can't drive. Coming from him, right, it was hilarious. I was buckled up. Didn't expect to see this guy.
Yeah.
But we had lots of lovely times, by the fireside, we had to be by the fireside, actually, in Sweden, because the midges were so bad. But that, to me, and again, similar sort of people like doing that. Being in the outdoors, experience good chat, and it's the lifestyle thing, Once you've experienced it, I do want to change it now. So much more so, I've decided to move over there now.
That is something that we were going to talk about anyway. You've made the decision to make it your full-time home. You're going to be moving out there soon. That feel like the next sort of chapter in your life that just made sense.
Yeah, it is. It's like, and again, obviously the fishing is a big draw, and everything I've spoke about. It's a special place, and there's lots of friends, and like-minded people, and the pace of life. And every time I come, on the last few years, every time I've been coming back, there's been a lump in my throat. Why am I coming home? Yeah. This seems to be like my home. And in 2012, it's not so much. It's not a case of I haven't lived there before. In 2012, I was with a girl here for 6 years, and we split up. So my head was kind of in the shed a little bit. So I thought, I'll just go to Ireland. And I went for 2 weeks, and I stayed for 2.5 years. So I have got experience of living over there, So I'm chomping at the bit now, actually. I'm just waiting for the time to head over there.
So you'll be heading to Ireland, obviously, in the autumn. The season will be over, so you obviously won't be doing a huge amount of fishing initially. You'll be doing some fly tying, or
Yeah, that's right. I don't do a great deal of fly tying now, to be honest, but it's something which when I'm sitting down at the vice, I thoroughly enjoy, because in the colder weather, I do like comfort now, and I think, although yesterday wasn't very comfortable, we did have a great day.
We did.
But getting wet and cold. A lot of the boys and friends of mine, they do grayling fishing in the winter. I will do that probably once. I'm not really one for standing in cold water, so my mind turns more to fly tying then, especially in the winter months. And I know it's a popular thing with a lot of people. When it comes to fly tying, there are two. I've heard the saying so many times: you either tie for show or tie for throw. And I think I tie a nice fly, but there's far more people out there who are a different league altogether. I think social media has brought that to the front. There's so many amazing tyers there. I just tie flies to catch fish. Yeah. And even I remember the first fly I tied when I used to go to the after school classes, you can see, with Dave Roberts. He used to teach us how to tie flies. And the very first fly I tied, well, before I say the first fly, I remember he had this huge wooden box the size of this table. When he was opened up, it was full of feathers. And I remember the smell. That was quite something. I think we were probably mothballs at the time. But then that attracted me, all these feathers and hooks. And I thought, I got to get into this. And when you're younger, you do a lot of it, and I did. I was like obsessed as well. If I wasn't fishing the Llyn and walking up the lake, I'd come home, I'd be tying flies to go for the next day. But the black and peacock was the first fly which I ever tied, and it's funny enough, I can't remember the last time I fished with one now.
Really?
There's a lot of flies back then, which people don't fish. They almost forgot about, But it's nice to actually sit down at the vice and tie these old flies now, just for the sake of tying. So in fact, my very first, you can say, appearance in Trout Fisherman, I think I must have been about 12, 13. I entered a fly tying competition, and it was a junior competition. I tied a Zulu. And I remember I was in Scotland. We used to go to Scotland visiting family, and I actually just bought the magazine one day. And I opened the magazine, and I couldn't believe it. My name was in the magazine. I didn't win the competition. I was runner-up, but I always remember, all that time now, I still remember the words. Ceri's Zulu portrayed a crunchy, crinkly neatness, well worthy of another junior mention. That's the first time I've thought of that since then. Honest to God. Yeah, so again, little things like that gives a lot of encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always remember the Zulu. I had a red wool, what I took from my mother's knitting, and black ostrich, which she had ostrich, like, I don't know what they were, like clothing.
Yeah.
You just grabbed. Now it's so accessible to have any material you want. But back then, you just hung around what you got,
Beg, borrow or steal, yeah.
And again, I used to tie a lot of flies then when I was a kid with blue and yellow feathers, and that's because we had two budgies. So anything which I thought I could tie a fly with, I would,
Yeah. And yesterday we caught a couple of fish on flies you tied. Does it have like a principle for you to catch on your own tied flies, or do you not really care whether it's tied by someone else or shop bought fly, or does it matter to you that much?
I think 10 years ago, shop bought flies, they were just a waste of time. Even if they looked half decent patterns, the hooks wouldn't last. But nowadays, a lot of companies out there and brands, they tie great flies. Really do, So it's a different league now than what it was like 10 years ago even. But when it comes to patterns, I think there are thousands you could, and it makes me wonder why, because I'm almost the same. I got boxes and boxes of flies. But you can count, say a dozen patterns would catch me fish all season. But I always like to add a twist to it, right? Like, for instance, the fly we fished yesterday is a fly you can't buy because it's a twist which I've done, and as we found out, it's deadly.
Yep.
And a little bit of plug now. I sell a selection of my flies on my website, on the e-shop. But anyway, instead of having like loads of flies, I've just put like my top 10 flies. And the flies you can't buy anywhere else is because, like, for instance, yesterday, which you brought up now, there's a fly called what I call a shuttle hop.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's heard of hoppers and of shuttlecocks. And there's a twist in it. I find a shuttlecock with legs is like 10 times as effective as a normal shuttlecock, as we found out yesterday. And, so I like most of my patterns aren't ones you can buy. Everyone's the same, not just me. I'm not blowing my own trumpet. But like you'll probably go, or anybody who ties flies will add something different, a bit of red in the throat or something. And that's the great thing about fly tying. You can just do whatever you want, and it's a learning curve then, and you've got faith in that fly, and you know when to fish it. Like, I knew we were going to catch fish on that yesterday, which was, it was a shitty day.
It really was.
It was,
I've only just dried out.
Yeah, and but I knew you'd catch tries in it, and that lake hadn't been stocked for six weeks, maybe a month or 2 months. So, but there were fish, the rainbows, which are used to feeding naturally, and on most of the Welsh mountain lakes, most of the feed gets blown on because they're quite stony and rocky. There's not a lot of feed, aquatic life. So it's terrestrial. So anything which looks insecty, if you cover a fish, they'll take. I found out we did. And I will do a podcast actually on yesterday's day because it was fantastic.
It really was. Yeah, it was. I wasn't expecting it to be, like you say. But I think going back to what you said about in Ireland, when the days when the weather's just looks horrible and you want to stay in bed, they're the days when you actually you do pretty well.
Dirty days are the best. And we were going to fish. It was a toss-up, wasn't it? Llinfawr or Talabont. And yesterday was a day we did done all right in Talabont. Trout don't like nice days.
No, anglers do, but the fish maybe not so much.
Yeah. And unfortunately for you, it was a little bit of a worse day for you because you found out you had a mouse in the garage and it eaten into your waders.
Brand new pair of waders. First couple of strides into the water, just above knee height, and started getting soaked. I was like, what's going on? Came out, and looks like the mice are still in my shed.
And it wasn't just a little one. I could see, I was about 20 yards down the bank, and I could see the hole.
It was about as big as a 50p, I think. Yeah. So that wasn't ideal either. But thankfully, you don't need to wade too far.
So on the way back home now later, you're going to stop in Lionmongers for a
get a mouse
trap.
Yeah, so I definitely need one. So as an angler, you've obviously achieved an awful lot throughout your life, all different kinds of things. So what now in the future? Obviously, you're going to be living in Ireland, but what are your kind of future ambitions with your fishing going forward?
That's a tough one, really. I haven't really thought about it. As regards goals, I think, as I said, I'll be moving out to Ireland. I will be doing some guiding next year. I enjoy seeing other people catching fish now for the first time. I really enjoy passing my knowledge and experience on to anglers and to see the buzz. Like I took a guy out last week from Highbury in London, actually. He came up for a couple of days and he got his PB last week. And you could see the joy in his face. It was only about 2.5 pounds, but he was ecstatic. And it's nice to pass on what you've learned. So probably the goal is to take more people out and getting them to catch fish, and just enjoy my fishing. Really, I think that the big fish thing has come and gone now. I get far more pleasure catching fish in a dry fly, no matter what size it is. So that probably. It's a bit of a boring answer.
Maybe we've figured out what the next step is in that evolution you were talking about. Catch the most fish, catch the biggest fish. The next step is helping other people catch
Yeah.
what they want to catch, or
Yeah.
you know, enjoying other people's excitement or enjoyment. You know,
Yeah, so that's the goal, and to live out in the West. That's
I'm
the main
sure
thing,
there's a
really.
lot of your listeners in Ireland who'll be excited about the prospect of you offering a bit more guiding and stuff
Yeah.
out there. I'd imagine
Well,
you'll get a few.
Yeah, I've actually, I got to say, I get asked a lot to take people out fishing for ferox. No, I don't do that now. I stopped last year. But I will do the fly fishing guiding,
Yeah.
which is it's a whole nice experience to do, you know. Something else which I've enjoyed the last year or so was being editor of the Flyfishing Journal and working with yourself. It was a great position to be able to bring your own contributors and names together, and to put what I thought was a real lovely quality journal. I would love to be in a position to do something like that again, and hopefully there's one or two things in the pipeline. You never know what might come out.
So I know one of the things you always ask most of your guests is about a last cast, right? But I think with asking you, we need to have a little bit of a twist, because I can imagine that the answer is where you'd want your last cast to be is going to be Corrib, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So I think we'll let you have two answers. It's kind of cheating, but it is your podcast, so we'll let you have that. So Corrib, you can explain why Corrib will be your last cast, but also let's have an answer where Corrib's off the table and there's somewhere else you have to pick.
Yeah, I think a couple of people have asked me over the years where will be your last cast, and they automatically think the Corrib, and it is a very special place. But I think, because when I've asked other anglers this question, a similar answer comes up quite often, and it's where they started off. So I think my last cast would be Llyn Fawr, when I used to walk up mountain, where I used to fish as a boy. I made my first cast there, and when my father used to be with me, they were special times. So probably, you know, who'd have thought then that my first cast up Llyn Fawr have taken me to all these places, and to catch what I feel is the hardest trout. And I think it's only right that I have my last cast there, to be wading on the grass bank, listening to the peregrines above Llyn Fawr. If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to listen to more, please consider becoming a patron, where you'll get weekly podcasts and access to over 190 episodes, behind the scenes photography to go with each episode, plus other exclusive content and prizes. To become a Patreon, visit patreon.com/casting with Ceri Jones, or you can find the link on my website, castingwithcerijones.com. That's all for now. Tight lines, and may they always be up in the wave.